Yay! It's all there. All right, so we got a lot of things to go over today. I will be surprised if we get through everything, honestly, in my opinion. But if not, then cool. We have another week of antagonists.
Yeah.
We've gotten a lot of responses. I did not anticipate all the responses that we've gotten. We've had over 200 votes in the poll of who is your favorite Final Fantasy antagonist. I don't know how that happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so, and then I've gotten a few people mad at me because Seymour wasn't there and I forgot to put Seymour in there. That was my fault. Well, okay, to be fair, so the poll, like the straw poll I was using, if you like clicked one wrong button, it restarted the whole damn poll. So I was like, I just like needed to get through it as quick as I could before it like kicks me out again. So, I mean, I'm trying to think where we should start this conversation, if we should just go right into it or if we should like talk about, I don't know, because I feel like this week I've been researching so many of the antagonists that now from last week to this week, my favorite antagonist has changed. So I don't know about you guys, but mine has changed.
Mine changes all the time, honestly. It's
Yeah.
not just this podcast of research. It's whatever I'm vibing on, I guess, that week.
I know, yeah, because last week I said Sephiroth, and now I'm like Caius. I'm like obsessed with Caius, and now I'm obsessed with Kain. So that's where I'm at.
Caius has a great voice, so.
Oh, he's like butter. He really is. But I mean, I don't know. Has your guys' like changed from last week in this short amount of time?
I don't even remember my answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
I chose a left field answer because I feel like two other people chose my my answers. I think Kefka somebody else picked, but I can't remember who I picked. And I think somebody else picked. I picked Zeromus. That's what it was, because he was the embodiment of like stubborn hatred. No, I think I'm cool with that. Like Kefka is always my go-to. He's my number one because he won. So, like, of all the villains, he was the first and really like the only to truly win. He was sitting there in his victory throne, just like, I did what I had to do, and now the game is over, but the game is still going, and you guys are going to kill me now.
Right. We just have a viewer now. This is one of my longtime viewers. He's been with me for over 3 years. His name's Sweden, so I just want to say hi to him. Hi, Sweden.
Shout out to Sweden.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time. So, anyone else have like a change in their favorite over the week?
I don't want to say it's a change overall because I'm still kind of a Sephiroth fanboy. I love him.
Right.
But I think I commented on your straw poll, and someone else had mentioned Emmett Selk.
Yeah.
And I kind of forgot about him, and he, I've always loved the Shadowbringer storyline specifically, has really been picking up, and I'm not sure how many people played it, but you kind of like hang with this guy for quite a while. He's kind of like following you along. I don't want to give too much away because Shadowbringers, I guess, is not super new.
It's almost a year old now.
Almost a year old,
yeah.
But you really learn a lot about his backstory, and you kind of start to feel bad for him. But at the same time, you still are like, but he still wants us all to die. So
right. I've gotten a lot. I've gotten so many responses on both Xenos and Emmett that are very different from each other. So that's going to be a lot. But
I would like to say, I think we mentioned this a little bit in our pre-talk yesterday, but I think it always shows that you have a really, really good antagonist if they can make people like truly hate the character.
Oh yeah.
And I think Xenos, every time I saw that guy, it like made my blood boil. So I think you have to give him a shout out. He's a good villain because
I've
really
gotten
something
different. We'll talk about it more later, but I've gotten very different responses from Xena. I freaking hate this character. He's stupid. He's just a textbook villain. To this is the best written character Square Enix has ever written, and I want to sit on his lap, like that kind of thing. So like I've gotten we've gotten quite a bit of differing responses. The only one that's remained the same is Kefka. Everyone kind of agrees with Kefka and his bullshit, but yeah, we're gonna see some weird stuff from some tweeters. Has anyone else's favorite antagonist changed before we go into Garland, our first antagonist? Big boy Garland, I call him.
I kind of went from Sephiroth being my favorite antagonist to Jet. because I just, I know, like, he's not like, I don't know, but
he's the best.
He's the best. No, I just like how I feel like his whole story kind of came full circle. Like in the beginning, he was like this pretty shitty, awful father, and he was like a drunk, and no one really liked him. And then towards the end, he was just like, like, hey, I'm gonna save the world. I'm gonna try to repent for my sins, kind of deal. And I was like, oh, good for you.
Whenever I think of Jack, I just think daddy issues. Like that's the first thing that comes to my head. Like I don't like it doesn't like nothing except the word daddy issues. Like I'm just like daddy issues. But yeah.
It's actually.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's actually kind of cool when you think Jecht, because I mean, while his character did the most changing from what our perception of him was at the beginning to the end, you really didn't actually, timeline wise, he had already made his change long before the beginning of Final Fantasy X happened. The fact that he was Sin was already because he had already made the selfless sacrifice to get to that point,
right?
And set Auron up so he could throw him back in time to get in time, I guess, put him in the dream world, I guess, to go pick him up. So I mean, he's one of those antagonists that you think you think you're fighting him. I mean, they didn't even sugarcoat it. You knew very quickly early off in the game that Jecht was Sin. Auron didn't even try to hide that from anyone. You knew the whole time, basically, that that's what you were going. You just didn't know why he was doing what he was doing,
right?
Which you found out later on.
It was almost abrupt. It was like, oh, he's Sin, and you're like, wait, what? Yeah. Like very abrupt.
If I remember correctly, I feel like
it went like so quick.
Yeah.
Like when you're in Luca and Warren's telling you, you're just like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah. Well, we all of a sudden
in Luca, yeah.
We all of a sudden got 9 viewers. So if any viewers, if you would like to put in who is your favorite antagonist and why, Sweden, I had my hand full there for a sec. Just wanted to say hi. All right. I'm not going to sit and listen to you all, but I took a little sneak peek. All right, cool, Sweden. Thanks for joining for a sec. But anyone who's listening and has an opinion about their favorite character, let us know. With that said, we're going to start off with Garland. So here is our picture of Garland. I have all these cool features this week. We did not get any tweets about Garland, unfortunately, but that is fine because I think a lot of people haven't played the first Final Fantasy, really. So, but I was doing research on him, and I noticed that he turned from a very well-respected man, if you may call him, to kind of a Ganon, in my opinion, how he kind of just stole the princess and was like, fuck you, and just kind of ran off. Oh, I've got an echo? Okay, hold on. Uh-oh. You know what I might have to do? I might have to switch mics while you guys are talking, but that's fine. But yeah, he kind of changed from this. It reminds me of like back in the 80s, you had like all the characters that like stole a princess, if that makes sense. I don't know.
He was kind of a trope.
Oh yeah, that trope was common.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Go ahead, Lieutenant.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had that going on at the beginning where he stole a princess. Of course, that got rectified by level 5 and minute 31, depending on how quickly you got through that area of the game. His character, I think, did kind of like as good as the 1987 could do it in the gaming, capabilities that we had at the time, where, Chaos, as we met him, like, I think the twist that they gave you that, and people might actually know his backstory and, what he had to go through, but when you beat him there, like, didn't he somehow manage to, like, die and then become Chaos, and then like that whole thing, I still am kind of like, I need to go back and replay 1. I know somebody just finished that.
Yeah.
Segue into what happened with Garland.
It's a little weird because it kind of throws you into it. From what it seems to suggest at the end, is that once you get to the Chaos Shrine for the final time, you get through that wildly difficult dungeon, by the way. It really pissed me off. But anyways.
It's hard.
Yeah. you come across Garland, and then he basically turns into chaos. And then the ending suggests that you fix the time loop, you destroy chaos, and when you get back, the heroes. It's a misconception actually, because I see a lot of people say, "Oh no, the Warriors of Light are stuck in the past now," but that's not true. They explicitly say that they go back to their own timeline, and Garland is actually there, but he isn't jaded anymore. Everything was fixed in the past, so Garland actually kind of gets his retribution at the end, and the fact that he's no longer this evil, power-hungry man, and he's still loyal to the kingdom and whatnot. So it's one of those times where the bad guy at the end kind of comes out redeemed.
Right.
But he's only redeemed because we went in there and, fixed up the whole chaos thing.
Right.
So,
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know if that echoes better, by the way. I just switched which microphone I'm using. Yeah, I was when I was researching, because I've never played Final Fantasy 1, but I don't know, he was an interesting character. I just am always weirded out by how much armor these guys have on. Not only him, but two other there's just so much of him. Physically.
Like, how do you move?
I know, how do you move? But and then we wrote down that there was like a time loop with him. And I also saw that as well, and kind of a thing where he wants to live forever. Is that what you guys kind of got from him?
He explicitly says it at the end, actually. He says that he's going to defeat, when you, go up to him and you fight him, he explicitly states something to the effect of, your journey will end here, we'll defeat you here, and I'll be able to continuously live on forever in this time loop. So that's, his whole thing. He really wants to be this powerful entity that gets to live forever. Although I'm not sure that it's because he wants to live forever more so than he wants to be super powerful.
Right. I mean, I guess that's kind of a common theme, power hungry.
Yeah.
And
I also would like to mention it's a little hard to nail him down too, because being completely honest, Final Fantasy 1, in relation to all the other Final Fantasies, even starting at 2, I have not beaten 2, I've just started it.
Mm-hmm.
But Final Fantasy 1 is very light on the story, which is understandable. It's it's an old RPG, you don't really need to know. You save the princess, you stop the bad guy, you light the crystals. There is some fluff here and there.
I think, if I'm going to compare apples to apples, which would be Final Fantasy OG to, say, The Legend of Zelda, it is much heavier with story than anything real. Not anything, granted, but a lot of the mainline titles that were being pumped out at the time.
Oh, no, I don't disagree there.
Now, when you compare it to its other, successors, Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, and so on, and obviously, Final Fantasy 1 was very light, but I wonder if it was due to the limitations of what we expected from games at the time, and the fact that it was supposed to be a Hail Mary, that they didn't actually expect was gonna do anything for them anyway.
Sure. Yeah, and I think you can feel that when you play it too. Like I said, it definitely does. It's not saying that there's no story.
Mm-hmm.
There was a story. It was coherent. We knew what the goal is. We knew what the problem was throughout the game. I was comparing it directly to the little I know about Final Fantasy 2, because Final Fantasy 2 didn't come out that long after Final Fantasy 1 was a success. So
the year later, maybe year 2.
Yep. Yeah, and it was only released in Japan originally.
Yeah, you told me about that on your stream last night, and I was like, I've heard this before, but every time I hear it, I'm just like, about the chronological order of 1 to 2 to...
Right.
2 and 3 are the only ones that are wonky.
Because our 2 was Final Fantasy 4, right? So we didn't even see it till later.
Yeah, and that blows my mind, but so we see Garland with a time loop, living forever, and I feel like we've seen that multiple times with the I just want to be the most powerful being on Earth. We see that to this day in video games, especially back then. I think of, I don't know why, but when I thought of him and when I was looking at him, I was thinking Bowser and Ganon. They were just the first two that came to my head. It was the same time, very popular games. They kind of all go together. Not really, but they just are very popular in their own. So when I was doing research on him and getting to know him, I thought of these antagonists that we always think of. But I also had a question. Do you guys think he was a tragic character that just was afraid to die?
I want to say no, not that aspect, but what I find tragic about Garland is that it's implied, especially like if you played Dissidia, it's implied that like he feels like bound to fate, like like his ties with chaos and the battle of like the gods or whatever, and like that like corrupts his mind. And so like I wanted to add about like the ending where it's sort of left ambiguous, like when it's basically just said like he will await the warriors of light, like when they return back to their time, but it doesn't it doesn't really say like is he good, or is he still corrupt in some way. So like I don't think his concern was really about like living forever. Like yeah, he used the fiends to create the time loop, but I think that was more about just like he was infatuated with cycles and
Yep.
just like power and war and destruction. He was like really brutal too. He was a good knight. But yeah, so I think the tragedy is that you're dealing with someone who doesn't feel like they have freedom, to exist in whatever way they really want. They feel sort of trapped in just the way they're bound to like their purpose in existence. Which so that to me was tragic about him.
Yeah, I think he definitely viewed the time situation as something that was just a fact of life, and he was just a part of that.
Yeah, it was like a means to an end, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, in a way, I feel like, again, I haven't played the game. I just kind of read about the character, did some research, and I think we all kind of have that feeling of not, wanting to live forever, wanting to have everything we want, and I don't blame him. He just kind of was a little bit more extreme on his measures, but that's most of the Final Fantasy antagonists, to be honest. I feel like they all have a pretty good means to their end, but they just go a bad way of doing it. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say a lot about Garland. In Dissidia, he wasn't very deep either. Yeah, it's hard to really. There's so many other antagonists that we've gotten to know so well. Hey, Alto, good to see you. But does anyone else have anything to say about Garland, or chat? Do you have anything else to say? Because we've got some funny tweets coming for the Emperor that I'm really excited to read. So, yeah, let's go on to him. So, let me turn off that picture. All right, so now we're going to talk about the Emperor from Final Fantasy II. Interesting man. Does anyone have anything to say about him before I go on with these tweets that I had gotten?
What a jerk.
What a jerk. I heard that as well. So,
yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say our first tweet. So we got 2 tweets about the Emperor. I'm trying to have them load on my screen because they're really tiny. The first one kind of along the same lines. My computer's not loading correctly. Yeah. Oh, here it comes. Okay. It says the Emperor. He defeated hell and came back to life. How much more badass can you be? Do we agree with that?
I like that. This is a good tweet. That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at it through that way, he sounds like Jesus a little bit.
He does kind of sound like Jesus. But a thing with him is I noticed that he summoned creatures from hell to get what he wanted. I was like, damn, this guy sold his soul. He went out there. He did it.
His personality in this
he
city
was
is
like a
really great
demon
too.
He what? Uh-oh.
Why does he remind me of like the Goblin King?
Oh, he does.
Oh, he does.
Yes. Excellent. That's great. Yep.
Oh my god, he really does.
Sorry.
No, it's true. And I remember seeing, and I never realized that his name was Mateus. And I play on the Mateus server in Final Fantasy 14. And I was like, oh, I like just never put 2 and 2 together. I was like, where does this random ass Mateus name come from? Like, yeah. But we also got another tweet about him, which was probably my favorite tweet that I had gotten entirely. Hold on, it's loading. It's something, here, let me move it. Sorry. Just keep talking. So yeah, I'm trying to get tweets and pictures up of our dear friend, the Emperor here. it says, Emperor Mateus is a cruel, heartless bastard, seeking nothing more but power and the cost of literally anything he can sacrifice to the cause. So why do I find this human heavenly form so sexy? He crossed the moral event horizon. Why do I want him to take me to bed? And that is like my favorite tweet I have gotten out of all of them. And it was like right off the bat. It was like it was the first one I think I got, and I was like, damn. Lucy
really
knows
quick,
what she's talking about. Huh?
I just wanted to say to Chi-Ji in chat, I agree with you. I do think the complexity of characters starts to pick up after 3 as well.
Yeah, that's another thing. It was hard to find like good things to talk about with these antagonists until later, because they don't have much complexity. I'm gonna just here.
Yeah. The writers just need some practice, I guess.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually.
And I think it was just maybe the time as well. Like, it was just hard to convey a lot of things over pixelated characters, you know? That might be it. But, yeah, so Chi-Ji said, I feel like the antagonist, you said that. And then also says he fucks. So I think everyone has these very conflicting feelings about the Emperor. So I guess, like, right off the bat, the Emperor, he wants to conquer the world. He summons these creatures from hell. And I wrote in our notes, homeboy, like, sold his soul. That's what I wrote about him. So have you run into him yet, Doctor?
I have not quite yet. I just only did the first maybe 2 hours of the game so far, and I am pretty slow at it. I did have a big misstep and lost about 20, maybe 30 minutes of time because I died and I was not saving like I should.
Oh, God.
So,
just beat yourself up. You'll be max level in no time.
Right. No,
yeah, that's what I hear.
He does look like the Goblin King, though. Like, I'm seeing it so much more now.
That's why he's so enticing.
Yeah,
because he's David Bowie.
He is. He's David Bowie.
We figured it out.
There we go. But not only did this bitch, I will call him a bitch, summoned demons from hell, but he exiled his mother to the desert.
That's right.
So, sorry. Yeah, he exiled his mother.
About that.
Huh?
Oh, nothing. I was just making a stupid joke.
Oh,
but
no.
I was like, I wonder how Sephiroth would feel about that.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my
Don't
God.
mess with mother.
He literally exiled his mother, was like, fuck you, Mom. And I guess his mom kept trying to save him from his darkness even after she, like, he sent her to a nursing home. Who knows? In the desert. I don't know. But, like, he didn't hold back. He was like, fuck you, I'm going to conquer the world, Mom. Get out of here. You're ruining my dreams.
Definitely the opposite of mommy issues.
Oh, yeah. And then it's funny because then we see, like, the mommy issues come up multiple times with the other antagonists. Like, not just Sephiroth, but other ones, too. And then this guy's like, bye, Mom! See ya! So, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. But, I mean, he goes from destroying the Empire to just wanting to rule the world. Because didn't he die at one point? If anyone's played the game before, I have not played Final Fantasy 2. But he does die, and then he comes back.
Well, I think he died on purpose, or at least that's the one of the running thoughts on it.
Oh, okay.
Goes to hell, which is where he wanted to be in the first place.
Yeah.
And then you go down to Pandemonium, and that's where you kill him again. And then if you do the extra dungeon, you kill his other side of him. It's all weird. Yeah, he's kind of a bitch.
Yeah, because he's got a dark half and a light half, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
You fight his dark half at the end of the game, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then in the other dungeon, you fight his light half, which is like hella harder.
Is it?
Well, that or it's just because your party is made up of people who have already died throughout the whole game. Like that was rough. I don't think I ever completed that dungeon.
If I remember correctly, it's 2 different parties. One is like the main party fighting the dark half, and then the dude
Minwoo.
Minwoo. Yes.
Yeah, everybody who dies throughout the whole story of 2 is who you play in the follow dungeon after you beat the game.
Yep.
So Minwoo was the monk. There's a couple. You gather party members while you're down there, and if you didn't really level them, I mean, the status they were at was where they were when they died in your game.
Oh.
And it made it very difficult because the enemies were hard out the gate. So very hard to level up since you had to kill yourself, but everybody was trying to kill you too. So
right. I remember him in Dissidia, and just his presence, and I was like, this guy, yeah, he just has a weird vibe to him. I feel like there's not much to say other than we all don't like him. He's kind of a bitch. And then some people are just like, take me now. I love you. He's a horrible person, but he's hot. That's kind of what I've gotten from Emperor Mateus here. But yeah, it's interesting for sure.
Goblin King.
The Goblin King. Yeah, that's what we should call him. He really does look like that. God. And I picked a picture from the new Dissidia too, because I was like, ooh, he looks really good in that picture. Like, his concept art's kind of terrifying, honestly, in my opinion, at least. I was looking at like his concept art, and I was just like, bah! Like, it's just very scary. I think that was the point, though, to make him terrifying. But he is kind of a terrifying figure. So, I mean, does anyone else have anything else to say about Emperor Mateus here?
Used to piss me off in Dissidia. But
Did he?
yeah, just throwing that huge ball of energy, and you'd always do it like right when I'm coming in for him. I don't know. I had some bad experiences fighting high-level Mateus. I don't know.
It's just, yeah, he's crazy. Oh, I still have Garland up.
I will say, for anyone interested in like deeper backstory and deeper story about Final Fantasy II, there was a Japanese-only novelization about the game, and that expands a lot more. So, like, if you can find a translation on the internet, I would highly recommend people read that. It gives you a lot deeper, scope into the Emperor and the characters, and it's just great to have like a book that goes along with your game. It expands so much more. I'm a huge fan of that when games have like books and comics that go with them.
I do too, and I know that 7 had quite a bit. When I was like nerding out over 7 when I was in high school, I do remember there was books, and 13 had a book. I love that. I love it when games come out with like additional content that's not a video game. Even though I do love the video game, it's just kind of nice to see it be a universe rather than just strictly
it's like a
game.
full-fledged mythos, and I don't know, my imagination personally has always been like my most powerful tool. So like when a game or any kind of story, like a movie or a TV show, gives you like the opportunity to plug your imagination into that's powerful, because then you develop such a deeper emotional connection to that piece of fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And Chi-Chi says nice, which I agree, Chi-Chi. Nice. It's very nice. Along with Final Fantasy II, we don't only have the Emperor, but we also have Leon, which we did get a response over Leon. Or the Dark King. So here's Leon. I think he looks hotter than Emperor Mateus, in my opinion. But I was like, wait, maybe, I don't know, but I'm leaning really close to my screen because the tweet is really tiny.
I think I plugged in Leon at the beginning when we were first drafting up our, to-do list. He is in your party, right? He's one of your main 4 characters in your party, but there for a while. What is it? They call him the Dark Knight, right?
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Batman, but yeah. And I feel like, towards the end, he eventually comes back and joins your party again.
Yeah.
But
if I remember correctly, you don't actually play as him. You start the story as him. Then you guys you flee, and then he gets lost. He gets split from the group.
Yeah.
And then you find him later in the game. He joins you guys, and then you beat the game, and he's just like, "Okay, guys, peace out." Like, what?
I kind of got that impression too. So we did get a tweet about Leon. We got one. I was actually surprised because I haven't heard much about Leon. But Leon in Final Fantasy II, because you spend the entire game searching for him while fighting this Dark Knight of the Empire, only to learn it's him. And then they were mentioning Kefka later, which we will get to. But that's what they said about Leon. And I was confused about him because he's part of your party, and then he leaves, and then he's just kind of gone, right?
Yeah, the idea with Leon, I get, actually reminds me, and it's probably the other way around, things they did with Leon is inspired them when they were building Cain in 4.
Yes!
That's what I kind of got, too. I was like, this sounds like Cain to me.
Yeah, I mean, because Cain starts off in your party when you're taking the ring to the city, or the town, or whatever. And then he leaves, and when next time you see him, He's trying to fight your ass. So, yeah, I got that somewhat. Although I like the idea where they made him, you were fighting somebody throughout the whole thing, which is kind of like when Final Fantasy story kind of got some depth to it, where you knew this is this girl's brother, right?
Yeah, that's Maria's brother.
Yeah, Maria's brother.
And you're fighting this Dark Knight throughout the game, and I don't really know, because I haven't played it in a while, how long it drew out, but I feel like it was towards the very end of the game before he actually joined you. And you might have even, the moment when you discover him, and it's like, what, 1988, and you're like 6 years old, or, well, old people might have been.
It's like unmasking on Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, it's like, wow. You don't get that in Super Mario or, Tetris. So,
right.
Yeah, especially in an era where like so many stories were just like good versus evil, clear cut, happy endings, good strives over everything. It was rare to see that like, oh, I'm kind of fighting against my brother. Like, whoa, that's.
Well, it kind of reminds me of Star Wars, because when I was seeing that, I was like, oh, he went to the dark side, and then I'm like, I just thought of Darth Vader. Drowned Summer says there are some character ideas that have been recycled and returned to later games. I also did notice that, especially compiling all this together, and also Drowned Summer. Thank you for hosting. That was very nice of you, and all of your people coming. So, but yeah, I did notice that as well. But yeah, it did remind me of Star Wars, kind of like the trope of, I don't even know, like, I am your father, but it's now I am your brother. So
yeah,
that's kind of
I've heard that comparison a lot, actually, that Final Fantasy 2 is like Star Wars Final Fantasy.
Yeah, it kind of is, especially with like the Emperor. Now that you're saying that, like the Emperor.
And 12.
Yeah, and Drowned Summer also says Star Wars has definitely been an influence on Final Fantasy over the years, especially with 4 and 12. What do you think about that?
I think it's pretty spot on, honestly.
Really? Okay. I mean,
I see it a lot in 12. You're fighting back against the evil empire,
Yeah, because there's the word emperor is thrown around quite a bit, I think, in this
in Final Fantasy,
Yeah.
6 was huge. Act 1 of Part 6 was huge. Totally focused about the Empire and conquest.
Yeah. So, like, the Emperor, except the Emperor's hot in this version, and Star Wars is not, maybe that's the change they made.
Gross.
Yeah.
Saggy.
But yeah, Chi-Chi says the judges in 12 look like Vader. I do agree with that. I do agree with that.
This is super shallow, but when I was young, the thing that drew me to Final Fantasy 12 originally is I thought the judges always looked so cool, and I just like wanted to play to get to them because I thought they were so neat.
We're gonna talk about the judges later. Yeah, I'm excited because you guys at our pre-talk yesterday were like, "Oh, the judges! We could talk about the judges forever." So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about the judges, because I purposely did not research that because I knew you guys had some stuff. I was like, I'm just gonna let them do it.
I'm sure we have a couple Evil East fans in here that probably could speak for a while on judges.
Oh yeah.
Look at her go. She's excited.
Vanessa's like 12. That's another thing I literally put, I think, in our notes, like, Vanessa, please speak on this, because I knew that you're like a huge 12 fan. Drowned Summer says that many of the characters in 12 are analogs of characters from the original trilogy, and Fran is Chewie.
Fran is. I've never thought of it like that.
That's so true, though.
I don't know if I like that.
I don't either. But, like,
I'm not sure how that makes me feel. Yeah.
That does make me feel weird, but it is true, like, now that you say it. Let's go on.
Is that Fran?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Let's go on to our baby girl, Cloud of Darkness. So I chose the hot version of her because I like it better. But I got no tweets about the Cloud of Darkness.
It's a shame.
It was a shame because she did appear in Final Fantasy 14. She was a really big dungeon boss in Final Fantasy 14. But I didn't get a lot from her from 3. She's just kind of this entity almost.
I was gonna ask. It just clicked when I read that on our notes. But is the boss version in Final Fantasy 14 supposed to be the new one in the Eden Verse raid? The Dark Cloud?
No, so she's in one of the Alliance raids, or one of the Alliance raids. I can't remember which one it is. I think it's but
But it's like that big, scary cloud of darkness, when you have to stand on the side of the arena or something.
Oh, yeah, duh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was from the base one. Yeah, duh.
Yeah. So she is in 14. She makes another appearance. She is in Dissidia. Doesn't have much depth in Dissidia. Honestly forgot she was a character, to be honest with you. We got no tweets about the Cloud of Darkness, but does anyone have anything to say about the Cloud of Darkness?
I mean, sorry.
No, go, Vanessa. Yeah.
She looks a lot like Ultimecia.
Yes, she does. Yeah, she does.
That's a good comparison.
Yeah, she does. And
Are they the? I'm trying to think. Correct me if I'm wrong. There are only 2 female final bosses, though, isn't there?
So that's another thing I put in our notes. She's the first antagonist that's a female, but should we say
Takes a female form. She's genderless, right? But yeah.
Right, but she is like a female form.
Mm-hmm.
But the next time we see a female antagonist is an 8. So I think, right? Am I right?
A female primary antagonist.
Yeah,
yes.
primary. An 8. Yeah. So. Yeah, but not much to say about her on my end. I don't know if anyone else has anything to say.
Hold on. Unless you count Genova. That was
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were going to talk about Genova today, too. So,
yeah.
Genova, yes. Yes.
Not final boss, but second to final boss, and the reason everything's happening. So, yeah, I don't know. You can give that to Genova.
Yeah, that's true. I did forget about. I forget Genova's like. I guess she's kind of like the same thing as the Cloud of Darkness, where she is kind of more of a thing rather than a gender, but is a female form. I don't know. It's
Genova's a mother.
A mother.
Genova has a gender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Drowned Summer says after that is not LeBlanc. I did forget about LeBlanc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it feels like she's kind of the first primary one, because you've got all these like females on the side, but you don't have like a primary female antagonist until really 8 that I can think of. So. Which is a shame.
And there's 3 of them because she hops around from Edia to Adele to, Renoa first, but Renoa just can't take it. She stays sleeping.
Right. So, but yeah, that's all we really had to say about Miss Cloud of Darkness.
Well, she kind of shows up like at the very end. It's similar to Necron in a way, but I think that they mentioned, I want to say there was more discussion throughout the game about it, but it's another one of those where you don't see him until you fight him.
Right.
Yeah, and I think
pretty much it.
Yeah, I kind of think that's why it's hard to talk about too, because like I'm a huge fan of 3. Like, 'cause I just I keep mentioning it, but I just love the introduction of the job system in 3.
Right.
And
3 was all about gameplay.
Yeah, I still don't have much to say.
Well, I feel like we should be, if we're going to talk final boss only of antagonists, we should probably be talking more about Zand than we are talking about Cloud of Darkness for 3, because it's like Zand was the Golbez of 3,
right,
controlled by something else, and you found out at the very end.
And
am I wrong?
No, you're right, because really Zand is the reason that the Cloud of Darkness is a thing. Again, I
thought she controlled it. I'm trying to, it's been a while since I played 3.
Exactly, and that's the hard thing with these like older ones. I've really had to like research, because I'm like, it's been a while, or I have not played them. But from what I remember, she's kind of the entity of an imbalance between light and darkness after Zand is killed. Is that correct? Or am I off there? Or is that 14? I think that's 14.
Well, no, so when Zand dies, that's when she comes out.
Yeah.
You're fighting him. You get to him, you fight him, you kill him. She appears. She wipes your party. The Warriors of Darkness, I think, heal you. Mm-hmm. Or wait, no, that's 4. Shit.
Yeah, you have to free them in the final dungeon.
No, you're right.
And if you
she's a mess. She's a mess.
Yeah, you're right. You free them, and then she pops back out. And now, I guess the happiness of all of the people that you've met, infuse you with power, and then you're able to finally take her down.
Okay.
Something along those lines. But
so the light beating the darkness kind of thing is the biggest.
Cloud of.
The cloud of.
Darkness is in Cloud of.
Yeah. But that's really all the things I have about her, and we really got no responses on her. So I see people in the chat right now talking a lot about 13. God.
Oh boy.
I would love to skip to 13 right now. We can mention some stuff, but you guys are talking about Lumina, which I was going to include Lumina in this, but I got so overwhelmed with the amount of responses we had for other games that I didn't go to Lumina, but now that she's being mentioned, we'll go to her. We'll take a detour. But Drowned Summer says that, Chi-Ji says that Lumina in 13.3 is another female antagonist. And Drowned Summer says, I didn't play enough of Lightning Returns due to it being Lightning Returns. I also agree with that. Hated it with a passion. And some people love that game. Chi-Ji went back and said, I love Final Fantasy 13.3.
Yeah, I enjoy the series.
Yeah, it is a good series. But then Drowned Summer says that 13 is okay. 13.2 vastly improved on many things. Lightning Returns squandered the good, but they will build it up into. Oh God. Honestly, maybe we should wait for 13. I don't know what you guys think. Bilbo, thank you for hosting, by the way. I don't know. And that's another thing. Like the antagonists are so complex. It's so much more complex in the battle systems. I thought I'd have a harder time talking about that last week. But I've been like racking my brain all week about these guys. But let's move on to 4. So who has played 4?
Me, like 60,000 million bajillion.
Yeah. It's the very first Final Fantasy I beat.
Very good. All right. So
I think it was like, I can't remember if it was still like a $50 cartridge or if it actually cost more, like 60. But I remember the night we bought Final Fantasy 2, and that game was just, I played the hell out of the game. I farmed so much. I poured hundreds and hundreds of hours into that. It hit me so much in story that, like, at the time, all my friends from the neighborhood, when we would hang out and stuff, like, we would go to each other, like, a bunch of us had Final Fantasy 2, and we would, like, even when we weren't playing the game, when we were playing, like, pretend or make-believe or whatever you want to call it, we were, like, role-playing as Final Fantasy 4 characters, you know?
Yeah.
And I keep saying, like, 2 or 4 interchangeably because for the SNES, it was Final Fantasy 2.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you went to the frickin' moon, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Ship. I
like
mean, you just do that back then.
The damn moon is a whale that's taking you to the moon, like
a lunar whale.
Yeah,
that was a complex one. We did get a response about Kane from Red Shield Gamer saying he mentioned Kefka first, but then he went on to Kane. That being said, Kane officially an anti-hero and not a villain. Still my favorite character either way. Do you guys think he was more of an anti-hero or a villain? What do you guys think?
Was he not manipulated?
He was.
That's the question. That's the question. Is like when you're playing through the game, you know the game's telling you he's being brainwashed by Golbez, being brainwashed by Zemus, but then like even Kane admits like part of me was in that. Like part of me was agreeing to these decisions that I made because you know like I had a thing for the girl, Cecil. like you know I sort of like I didn't put up as good of a fight about it, and that's why at the end of the game. Kane is just like, nah, I'm not good enough to hang with y'all because, you know, like I have sinned against you. Like I kind of was part of that corruption. Like it would be an excuse. Like that was that. Like, oh, I love Final Fantasy IV. It was so tragic, and like at that age to see that, like from a character like this dude. Not only did he stabbed his best friend in the back multiple times. Like the game tries to make you think he's like being brainwashed and under control, and then he like goes back and forth and yo-yos, and then at the end he's like, nah, actually, you know what? I was actually kind of partly in that. So like I need to make myself right before I can come back into your fold. And he was one of my favorite characters ever.
Yeah, I would say that if we're gonna say that Kane is not an antagonist, we would have to say the same thing about Golbez is not an antagonist.
That's true.
Yeah.
And like, where does the line of not an antagonist? If it's just because they're manipulated, they're no longer an antagonist, then I don't know if that's like a good measure stick, because then there's a lot of non-really antagonists throughout the entire series. You could definitely say the primary antagonist is Zemus, then it becomes Zeramus, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that Kane is not an antagonist?
I think
I think he was.
I think he was in a way.
Yeah.
But also I feel for him. I think
Sure.
a lot of his motivation stemmed from envy. He wanted Cecil's life at the end of the day. Cecil had everything. Even Golbez wanted Cecil's life, honestly. Like, Cecil was like, he was like living it up, and everyone's like, I just want to be Cecil. But
yeah, I Chi-Chi just no, they are antagonists, but they aren't the villain, and that's going to be my thought
that's
as
a good
well.
way to put it.
There's a difference between being an
difference.
antagonist character and being the villain.
Right, and Chi-Chi also said that 4 had a big theme of people being manipulated.
Truth.
I think that's what makes it so different than the other 3, is this is a new... It's not just like the evil and the good. This is something that's way more complex and way more... It's much deeper than, the other games. So it's hard to explain. Yeah, it's manipulation. It's not somebody that wants to conquer the world. It's these people are being manipulated and being... I don't even know.
I actually feel like Golbez is like lower on that bar. Like, Golbez was clearly manipulated because he was half Lunarian and susceptible. But then as soon as he snaps out of it, he's 100% Cecil. I'm your brother.
Right,
I love you. Like, I got your back. Even though you can never forgive me for all the things that I did, I am 100% unconditional about you. And Cain, the problem though with Cain is like, because he wasn't like fully manipulated, like he wasn't just a brainwashed potato. It was basically just more like power of suggestion with Cain. Like, hey Cain, wouldn't it be cool if you had Rosa? And Cain is like, yeah, actually that would be cool.
Pretty
like,
cool.
Yeah. And so like I feel like Cain was higher on that, like was a bigger antagonist because of that back and forth. Like, ultimately Cain was good, but I think he fits anti-hero, and Golbez was just a potato. He was just a puppet.
Yeah, so I had Cain up, and I'm putting Golbez up, so we're talking about both kind of right now, because it's hard to talk about one without the other, because they were so entwined as characters and their motivations. But yeah, so I don't know. I almost want like an alternate ending where Cecil does get Rosa, just because I want to see what happens. But you always kind of cheer for the underdog kind of thing.
You mean Cain?
Yeah, Cain. Sorry, did I say Cecil? My bad. Cain. Yeah, but Drowned Summer said, or no, Bilbo says if it wasn't for Cecil, Cain would be full on antagonist plus a villain. How do we feel about that?
I don't know if I agree.
Well, the absence of Cecil would remove that rivalry piece that drove him to make bad choices,
and also the envy, the jealousy.
Yeah, I mean, also if Cecil's not around, then that frees Rosa up as well. I don't know. It's really, you take an element out of the story and just assume the story's going to go a specific way. It might not go that way. I don't know.
Right.
I feel like with 4, like the way they had the Dark Knight concept is similar to Final Fantasy 2. I think it would have been more accurate to label Cain as a Dark Dragoon. He had the loyalty of a Dragoon, and he had like that ethic of like being this badass warrior, but I feel like he was okay being ruthless if he was ordered to be. You know, like, hey, the king's ordering us to, massacre all these people. What can we do about it? Like, I'm just gonna do it. Like, he had less of a moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little bit, and we're getting a lot of feedback on 4. I think there is a lot of feelings about it, which I'm really glad. Drowned Summer says, well, I suppose that there is a difference between a villain and an antagonist. Ideologically opposed doesn't make them a villain.
True.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. And Bilbo also agrees. And Doctor, you commented, I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. And Drowned Summer also says, but if Cecil weren't there, who would Cain have to oppose?
I have to agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you did say that. Is there anybody else? I mean, I guess maybe that's too hypothetical, because it just wouldn't be the same story without Cecil, obviously. There would be...
Yeah, it gets really murky.
Yeah, it wouldn't... Golbez wouldn't have a goal, because Golbez... Eventually, in the end of the day, Golbez wants to avenge his mother. He wants...
Golbez wouldn't have a goal.
Yeah, he wants what Cecil took from him.
He would just be Bez.
Bez, yeah. So Golbez, yeah, it's like it's such a complicated story, and I really need to play it again. I think the last time I played it was, oh god, I don't even remember. I remember playing it on my iPad. I had like the app on my iPad, and I was playing it on my iPad. Yeah. So it had just like come out on like iPad or iOS or something, but Bilbo says eventually, in my opinion, he would oppose the King of Baron.
Well, we don't know how the King of Baron really was. It's implied that the King of Baron is actually a really noble king and a good king, and he basically was like the world police, but he had good relations with all the other continents and countries and stuff. And it wasn't until he was replaced by the Water Fiend that we're introduced to like some of this cruelty that he started doing. Like he wasn't pursuing crystals and stuff. So I feel like Cecil is the only barrier for Zemus, like preventing him from killing humanity and populating the earth with Lunarians.
Mm-hmm.
So we did actually get a couple tweets about Golbez. Golbez, to be honest with you guys, this is really kind of off subject, but the Final Fantasy 4. Oh no, that's 5. Never mind. Sorry, never mind. I was gonna say the Final Fantasy 5 art with it was actually. Never mind. I'm gonna just not. We did get a tweet about Golbez. Let me find it real quick. So it says, oh god, it's blocked by us. Let me move it. It says Final Fantasy. Am I confused? No. I can't see. Has Golbez as the big bad, but he actually is just a brainwash to the bone. It's sad to see the emotional block between Cecil and him. Also, it's amusing how in 4 he wears a full armor helmet, but in after years he just shows up in a cape and a kilt.
That's a good point.
And I was going to say, so not only Golbez, but X-Death, who we'll soon talk about, have these enormous chunks of armor, and I don't understand it. I just think it's a weird character design, but it does make him kind of seem more intimidating, I guess, but...
Oh, yeah.
I think that was intentional to appeal to people who were into, like, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, like that kind of, or like D&D, just like the typical knight appearance to sort of bring them in like, hey, this is a video game that's kind of like dice rolling.
Yeah, and I think also because we have to take into account that these were pixelated at the time, maybe more presence with the pixelated design, and like nowadays it's just kind of obnoxious. You don't need to have them with that much armor, but it's definitely interesting, some of these antagonist character designs. Like, I could go on for days about Sephiroth's long ass sword and how unnecessary it is. But like,
I gotta be honest, I love the I've always loved the big bulky armor on like tanky characters. Like even when I play Final Fantasy 14, when I'm playing Warrior or Dark Knight or any of the tank classes, I try to make my armor look just like as big, as intimidating as possible.
Yep, so
I don't know, I just love it. Yeah, oh yeah, the shoulder is so important.
Right, because I'm the opposite, where I'm like...
I have the shoulder pads.
Yeah, the shoulder pads. And like, I feel like I could get impaled on those shoulders of Golbez's. Like, holy crap. But, like...
Just checks you. You're dead.
Like, oh! Like, he was a hell of a quarterback.
You're dead.
Yeah, so, I also found it really interesting. It's almost another Star Wars thing. We're going into Star Wars a lot, but how Cecil is Golbez's brother. It's just interesting how they made that. I don't think they ever did that again, unless I'm like just not thinking right now because I'm only thinking about Golbez. But
they had Leon and Maria that lightly touched the same.
Final Fantasy 2. Yep.
Right. I did forget about that. My mind is like one-way track right now. Drowned Summer says, "I'd be down for Bez instead of Cecil. Happy Mondays, Bez." Bilbo says, "I'd kill the King of Baron. LOL." Luke, I am your brother, Gigi says. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Luke, I am your brother. That's where we're going with this.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know. It turns out that the King of Baron becomes Odin. How do you, are you casting lightning on him now? Like, he'll slap.
Oh, you cut off Shadow?
I basically was just saying, like, he'll just one hit slash you and cut you in half.
So with that, we also have Zemus, who is kind of the big bad in all of this. So it's not even Golbez or Kane. It's really Zemus who's causing all this fucking trouble. Let me pull up his picture. So last week, Shadow, you had a very beautiful ode to Zemus, and I would love to hear that again about what your thoughts of him. I really love the way you kind of put Zemus, like how you related to him.
Ode to Zemus. You bald-headed, Kojak-looking punk-ass mother...
It's like that one meme where it's like, you big, fat, stupid... Huh?
Body dies, but the spirit lives on.
Yeah, I mean, like, Zemus himself was such a... I mean, when you experience him in the game, you're watching Fusoya and Golbez casting, like, everything they have. Every single magic. Like, fire 1, 2, 3, like, ice, lightning, and then they cast Meteor, and, you know, like, he's just like, that's it? That's all you got? Like, get out of here. He's, like, the first full-blooded Lunarian other than Fusoya. Yeah, but Fusoya is, like, an old guy. And so Zemus is just, like, you know he's so much stronger. And I mean, it was huge to meet him and see him and, you know, see him totally kick ass and, like, just absorb anything that they were throwing at him. And then to find out that he was nothing, you know, compared to, like, the true evil that was behind him. And, you know, like, that was, I don't know, such a mind fuck when I was a kid. It was like, oh, it was less so the man and more that, like, undying, unyielding stubbornness in his chest. And that resonated real strongly with me. Like, even to this day, like, there are certain things, like, with me, like, some things, like, I have to check myself sometimes because I'll take it to the grave if you wrong me a certain way.
Yeah.
But, like, and then I remind myself, yeah, did that work out so well for Zemus?
It's almost like go ahead.
It's such a huge and large and powerful lesson about forgiveness and the power in that vulnerability. And, like, I'm like, my brain is, like, in so many different directions. Like, he's like the crime boss in prison that's, like, pulling all the strings on the outside world, you know, like, from inside prison. That's basically what his story was, is he was in this prison and he was just refusing to go to sleep. He's like, nah, I don't want to sleep. I want to populate that planet. Why we gotta hide here? You know, like, why are we on the moon?
Right. Like, tireless. Just.
Yeah. And like that, like, this is what happens when you don't let go of something that eats at you. Like, sometimes you just have to just let things go and, like, be better.
Yeah, he's an interesting. I almost attribute him to, like, kind of, like, mental health. I don't know, you know, because
exactly, that's what it is.
Yeah, like kind of schizophrenia almost. You know, you got that with a lot of characters where they hear these voices in their head, and in Golbez, he was hearing this voice in his head, and it was like he was going crazy, but it ended up just being something that was brainwashing him. Which I think.
Yeah, but he had to be susceptible because Cecil couldn't be contacted or reached by Zemus because he was more pure.
Yeah. Yeah. It almost reminds me of I'm going into Kingdom Hearts for a second, but Kane especially almost reminds me of Riku and how he didn't didn't have to be in the darkness, but he did. It kind of fell down the same path as Kane. And then Sora was Cecil, so I can, like, see where Square Enix is, like we said earlier, they've kind of recycled their thoughts. So it's interesting to see kind of how things have evolved and been used again. We have gotten some comments. Who's played Chrono Trigger? I have not played Chrono Trigger.
Yes. I just finished it, like, about a month and a half ago.
Which version did you play?
PS.
Nice.
Because we got some things about Chrono Trigger in here. So Bilbo says, I would have kept Masumine within Chrono Trigger's universe, honestly.
Oh,
talking about Sephiroth's sword versus the Masumine.
Okay, I was like, anyways. And then Bilbo also says, Odin got killed because he was struck by lightning, in my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong in the game. Yeah, so that is correct.
Well, I mean, he's just there as a summon. But, like, the King of Baron was killed by the Water Fiend / Golbez, and his spirit became Odin in Final
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy IV, and he's like an optional summon that you can get if you defeat him. He's weak against lightning, and that's basically Odin's story outside of Final Fantasy. Also, is like the whole lightning thing. And in Final Fantasy, I think it's pretty common that Odin and lightning pretty much go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Specifically his sword.
Yeah.
Being that Odin is weak to lightning, and Odin's son is anyone?
Thor.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Drowned Summer says that's an interesting thing, Chrono Trigger being one of Square's other notable RPGs from the SNES era. But the main villain is more of a force of nature and lacks any personality. That's an interesting point.
Lavos?
Yeah, Lavos is who they were talking about. When they
I mean, you could say the same about Zerom.
But with...
Yep.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Kind of like...
He's not a force of nature, but he's a force of humanity, or he's a force of the human condition, or I don't know because he's not human, he's Lunarian, but like the hominid condition, I guess, if you want to call it that, or humanoid condition. Same thing, like when Final Fantasy has these like villains and bosses that are more conceptual and just forces rather than an actual being or person. I think that's like more powerful.
Yeah.
When you try to think about it, like in the scope of the game, the story.
Right. Chiji says if Riku was an FF character, he'd be Dark Knight, though. Yes, he would.
Totally.
That's what he was, I think. It was a simpler version, because at the end of the day, not really, but Kingdom Hearts is kind of like a dialed down Final Fantasy in a Disney version, so kind of like a kid's game, but that's kind of who he would be.
He reminds me of Cypher in so many ways.
Oh
yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so and people are talking about Chrono Trigger and how that's kind of, Square's other game that has these common themes as well. So Square Enix, they knew how to do their bad guys, They have a lot of different ones. There's so many. I'm like, we're an hour in and we're only on Final Fantasy V, so we have a long way to go. I did skip the side games. I skipped 11. I was like, I can't do it. There's already so much. Another day, another time, we can maybe go into the side games and their antagonists and their protagonists. But today, it's the main ones are enough. There's so many of them. So, but now that brings us into Final Fantasy V, where we have Gilgamesh, which no one tweeted about him, which I honestly am like, because he's so funny to me. I mean, in 14, he comes back as a dungeon or a trial. He's a trial. And I was laughing so hard when he was turning me into a frog. I was like, oh my God.
He's hilarious.
And it even says, like, Square Enix brings him back so often, because he's not only in 5, but he's in other games too, because it is a comic relief.
I think he was in 8, right? As a summon?
Yep.
Yes, he was in 8. He was in multiple.
12. He was a hunt in 12.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that whole hunt was funny. The music was great.
Hilarious. Yeah, so we did write like the first appearance of Gilgamesh, and also Drowned Summer says as well. 5 is his first appearance. Has anyone played 5 and have any thoughts about the original?
Started that one as well.
Yeah, the original Gilgamesh. I might be saying his name wrong. It is a complicated.
It's the same idea. Is very. I think the first time he thinks he's going to get you, and he uses the Escalipur. Mm-hmm. And it does 1 damage to everybody. And he's like, what the hell is a sword? Yeah. It's supposed to be the ultimate weapon. I mean, he's always that comic relief. But Final Fantasy V, and I think the reason Gilgamesh is the way he is for anybody who's played Final Fantasy V knows that game is slapstick a lot. Like, there's a lot of just, like, humor, and it's, like, kind of like childish humor somewhat that's just woven throughout the entire game. Like, they'll sit there in the middle of like kind of like a serious situation, and they'll be making the dialogue is like written to be making jokes out of it.
Well, I always wondered that because Bart's is a little funny looking. Like I was always kind of like, what the hell? Like what is that?
Bart's is hilarious. I mean, him and his Chocobo are funny. He usually like him and Galef, like the way that their 2 characters bounce off each other are hilarious. Like, I think the game itself is a lot more lighthearted, but it's also it's I don't know, I enjoy it. Without, I don't know how much we given away here, but because I think that was one where, because I mean, we're used to party members dying, because I mean, it happened in 2 a lot. Like your guest party members, if they stopped being your guest, it's probably because they met their fate and they died by being crushed by a boulder or whatever. And in 5, you have this party member with you the entire time. It's a very funny game, and then he just dies partway through. Kind of like brings the serious around. But Gilgamesh, back to Gilgamesh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
He is a product of that lighthearted idea from the story. Mm-hmm. And he's just that comic relief. And then since they brought him back, they allowed him to keep that kind of attitude. Because I think we talked about it, was it yesterday? We think it's the same Gilgamesh in every Final Fantasy game, that he shows up on. So
different from Sid.
And the music that they wrote for the battle when you first go toe to toe with him, Battle of Big Bridge, that's just one of the best Final Fantasy themes out there.
Yeah, and we have a couple people in here saying, so Chiji says, I love 5 the most. It's one of the most underrated Final Fantasy games by far, but the story characters...
I respect that.
They definitely took the back seat. I agree with that too, honestly. I kind of do forget about Final Fantasy 5. I think it even shows we got absolutely no tweets about Gilgamesh, and he's not even in only Final Fantasy 5. He's in 8, he's in 12, he's in 14. We did get some tweets about X Death, which is great. But yeah, it is kind of an underrated game. He's also in 15, so
yep.
I forgot about that too. So it's great to see another one of the characters in the universe cross borders, because we see that with Biggs, we see that with Wedge, we see that with Sid, even though they're not the same like Gilgamesh. It's kind of nice to have another mascot, especially one as eccentric as this one. So Square claims that this is one of their most influential characters. I can't cite who said that, but it was said, and it is because he's in different folklore. So he's kind of a mix of two different mythologies. The first one is not Norse. I almost said Norse. I forgot what the first one was.
Babylonian.
Yeah, Babylonian. And then it's also a mix of a Japanese folklore, quite a bit. If you look into it, there's a ton of reasons why they came up with this character. He's very, very well thought out. And we also said he's the first to travel between worlds, which we just talked about. Yeah, he's just a reoccurring character. I honestly enjoy him. He was hilarious in 14. I was dying. I was like, yes, this is. I have not played that trial. Doctor, you play 14. I have not played that trial since I had to play it for the story. Have you played it in roulettes ever? I feel like it never really pops up.
Doctor, I think your mic's off.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, you're right. It was. I said, did you the Gilgamesh one? That trial?
I have not played it.
I actually only played it the one time where it was because I was doing the storyline. It doesn't pop off super often in roulette. I think it's because a lot of people haven't done it or didn't deem it necessary to do.
Yeah.
I think a lot just kind of go on a tangent. I think Shadowbringers brought in so many new people, and then they're not necessarily going to go unlock all the extra content.
It was an extra thing, I guess, but it was so funny. I don't know, we just get the serious.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
And Yojimbo pops up.
Yeah, Yojimbo. Oh yeah, I remember that. Yojimbo's another one of those. He kind of comes.
Gotta pay the toll.
Yeah, because he's in 10 and he's in 14 and he's also in 15, isn't he?
Yojimbo completely breaks Final Fantasy X though.
Yeah.
He does. Yojimbo was actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was a normal, higher level random encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Or he was a boss, one of the two. I want to say it was in 5, actually. Samurai comes out and they call him Yojimbo. I can look that up while we're talking about other things, but...
Yeah.
One Shadow.
One Shadow.
Well,
yeah, because I remember in 10, he was not required. He was totally optional to have.
Yep, he was one of the options.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mega Sisters.
How much did you have to pay to get him if you didn't want to fight him? It was
there was a complicated algorithm.
Yeah.
That was based on how much he kind of gave a shit about you, which is also based on how much money you give him.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember you could literally cheese it. It's so fun. It's so cheap. I don't do it because I just don't want to do it that way. But I'm a big fan of the super bosses. I've never beaten any of them. But if you could just save your game and go talk to Penance or whatever, you can just keep trying to load the game, pay Yojimbo all your money, and see if he does the one shot.
Oh my gosh.
ability, and eventually he'll do it, and then you go, "Yeah, I beat him."
Yeah, Vanessa, thank you for responding to our chat's going nuts here. Is there anything from chat that's standing out to you, Vanessa, that we should talk about? I keep seeing like Blitzball, like Gilgamesh is so badass. Gilgamesh is also a name of an ancient Babylonian myth. Yes, that was it. Yeah, so I'm glad our chat's popping off this week. But
I don't know. Right now, we're just talking about if like Titus is based off of Shuyin or if Shuyin is based off of Titus. But then there's like two different perspectives to look at it. Like in our world, we think that Shuyin was modeled after Titus, but then in the Final Fantasy X world, it's the other way around because
chicken or egg.
Chicken or egg.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shuyin was a real person and existed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Titus was a dream.
Titus was not.
Yeah.
Titus exists in our hearts.
Absolutely. And that's a really weird part of it because Jack didn't exist either, but he literally destroyed the world.
Crazy.
And all that came from Dreamland,
Yeah.
Oops.
Chiji says, I hate everything about Shuyi and stuff, so IDK. That's kind of me too. I'm just like, who is this bitch? I did not put Shuyi in this, but we can't talk about him. But as well as Gilgamesh, we also have X-Death, which we did get 2 tweets about X-Death, and they were kind of disturbing.
X-Death, the tree.
Yes. So the first one is Final Fantasy V's X-Death was a tree that lived in a castle made of flesh.
Sounds like a heavy metal concept album.
Yeah, but like I'm not surprised looking at this eccentric character that but I mean, was that said in the game? Is that true? Do we know?
That's gnarly.
It's gross, yeah. And then another tweet we got about X-Death is, oh gosh, this one's really small. Let me make it bigger. Okay, so it says, X-Death is definitely a good one because he's literally... I'm blind. Oh! What happened here? Because he's literally nature personified and passed as a human race, destroying the world's environment and exhausting the crystals. And then they said something about Kuja that we can go into later. Am I frozen? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I get the idea about him being nature personified. I mean, he was a tree, I want to say from the forest, one of the forests. I can't remember the name. But it's always these reactions to humanity in these games. It's like, yeah, you guys are destroying the environment, so I'm literally going to destroy the environment to get back at you. Because that's like literally what he tried to do, return everything to the void, So, I mean, it's, I don't know. X-Death, there's a lot into it, and if you read it, I would recommend going back if you haven't played through the game. I plan to play through it soon, so I don't want to ruin it again for myself. It's been about 7 years since I played through 5, and so it's due. But his whole idea was to return things to the void. Actually, that was Gilgamesh's fate, which he got tossed in, which I guess just took him to another Final Fantasy game. So, I mean, it's maybe the void's not all that bad. Just pops you back up in Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah. Are we frozen right now, by the way?
I think we are.
Okay, hold on.
On the stream, you?
Yeah, because I'm frozen on my screen. Oh, God. Hold on. We're having a bunch of technical...
Oh, you mean on Twitch?
Yeah, because, like, on Discord, I'm fine. Are we frozen, chat? Yes, it is. Okay.
I think we are.
Hold on, one sec. I'm going to fix that. Keep talking amongst yourselves.
Alright.
I don't think they can hear us right now. But I don't know.
Meanwhile, this will go to YouTube and they'll see this brief intermission.
Yeah, oh God. This is what I get for, oh God, what the hell? Now it's not popping up. One sec. Oh God, we're gonna lose viewers!
I will be right.
Okay. Can someone put in chat, like, just 1 second? We'll be up in a sec.
They can still hear us. They just can't see us.
Oh, okay, they can hear us. Okay, sorry guys, we're having technical difficulties real quick with Discord. We might have to end call and come back real quick. I don't know what's going on with it. It was doing really well, and then all of a sudden, it decided not to.
Tell everyone in quarantine to get off the internet.
Huh?
Yeah.
Tell everyone in quarantine to get off the internet.
Get off the internet! Oh, okay, I think I found it. I think we're good. Okay. Oh, we're back. Okay, here we are. All right. Sorry about that. All right, that was my fault. I don't know.
I want to say this.
I'm sweating. Okay. I'll edit that out. All right. So, X-Death we were talking about. Should we go on to the next character? Because now we're on.
I actually wanted to add a bit about X-Death.
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
I mean, so my understanding, if I remember correctly, about X-Death was that there's like this sentient forest that people basically, or the humans, were basically deciding to store all evil spirits into like one tree. And X-Death was like the embodiment of the storage of, like, it was the collection of all of these evil spirits over time that combined and sort of twisted this tree into this singular entity. Like, we are Legion, you know, like we are X-Death.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's essentially what happened. It was like a prison for evil souls. They stored them in that area, and then that tree, which was it was alive, it was a tree, right? But then all those evil spirits inside of it, it eventually gave form, and I'm sure it might be more complicated from step A to step B, but eventually led to X-Death.
And it's such like a Ghostbusters thing for me.
Yeah, and so his tree was in a castle made out of human flesh, right? Is that true?
Are you talking about the end game?
Yeah.
I feel like that was actually was that just a metaphor? They were, that tweet might
like the
have been a
forest
metaphor.
itself was like just a sentient forest, and then at the end, you're fighting him, I believe, in like an interdimensional rift.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. He's also a very armored character. I think I said that already.
I like the idea of the older Final Fantasies where the bosses, when you fought these major final bosses or main bosses, like their sprites in the game are so huge, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And X-Death was always like one of the largest ones out there. He stands almost the length of the screen. And yeah, you get a really good look. While your characters are like this big on the right side, he's standing tall, like the full screen.
It's funny because I named all of the like pictures here on the stream to identify which ones are pictures and which ones are tweet. I named them all Big Boy. So right now it says Big Boy X-Death, Big Boy Gilgamesh, Big Boy Kefka, just to like differentiate. But he is a big boy. Drow Summer says, because the two worlds become merged in 5 at a certain point. So we've got some good knowledge. All right, so let's go on to our winner. So we had a poll out yesterday on Final Fantasy Antagonist, which one's your favorite. We had over 200 votes, almost 300 actually, and Kefka won. Kefka won.
Of course he did.
A little tiny bit though. Sephiroth was a close second. So we are going to talk about Big Boy Kefka. I have many tweets about Kefka. So the first two I'm going to pop up here. The first one says, Kefka, terrifying, no need for some deconstructing. Sorry, I can't read. Deconstructing to reveal he was a misunderstood or something. He was just the embodiment of evil. So that was our first one. I got that a lot.
He's the embodiment of chaos, like complete and utter whatever is not expected. Let's just freaking try it because funsies.
Yeah.
Dark Knight Joker. That's Kefka.
Yep.
Well, a lot of people compare Kefka to Joker. They say, like...
I mean, look at his face.
Yeah,
they're
like,
both clowns.
They are, yeah, but a lot of people are also saying that Kefka was not very fleshed out as a villain, that he was just kind of an evil clown. Do you guys agree with that?
I feel like the clown appearance is there to, you know, to let you know firmly that you will never know what to expect from him because he's so chaotic. Like, he will do, like, he stabbed the Emperor in the back. Like, you go through the first act of the game thinking he's just a pawn. and that the Emperor is this main villain. And then he's like, "Screw you, Emperor! I'm taking all this magic. Like, this was never about you. This is about me, buddy."
Yeah, but he was also here. I'm gonna.
He was so chaotic.
So I'm expanding the tweet hella. It's covering our faces. I'll get rid of it in a second. But we did get Drowned Summer. You are actually in this tweet. Woo! But it says just how amazing Kefka was as an antagonist. He was brutal. He always stuck with me. Not that I like him, but his character was just so well fleshed out and left an impression on me. But we also had people saying the opposite, that he was not fleshed out. Drowned Summer in his tweet says, well, that kind of thing with Kefka isn't really fleshed out largely due to limitations of the time. His characterization stops at nihilistic clown. His actions and characters are very memorable. So how do you feel about that?
I think that's all there really was to him. Like, you know, once you establish that he's basically like an agent of chaos or is chaos, then like you don't really need to get more fleshed out than that. He probably didn't have much of a backstory that wasn't chaotic. Probably like carved his way out of his mom's womb if he was actually born from a human. You know, like he was just like no allegiances ever, no loyalties, no relationships, just constant chaos.
Yeah, he is chaos, the embodiment of it. We do have some chat responses. We also have 4 more tweets. But he has great hair, actually, is what she said. Everyone's hot in Final Fantasy, yes. I don't think there's an ugly character in Final Fantasy. Drowned Summer says he was based on the Joker, I think. I would not be surprised at this point. He is very much like him. Chiji says, oh, this was about Chrono Trigger. Kefka the Joker, he's interesting because he fears nothing and wants nothing, and that's what makes him scary and full of personality. That is kind of true. So I'm playing 2.6 right now, and I just got to the part where he poisoned the river. And I was like, whoa! I was like, damn!
Yeah, you were a big bad about it.
I was like, whoa! What, Vanessa?
Oh, watching that was really sad when you were like going through the castle. And...
Well, it was sadder in my head because I was making everyone have a southern accent, so that like kind of made it a little lighthearted. But
Castle's on fire, y'all.
I was like, Castle's on fire, y'all. I'm gonna but and then we have other tweets. I was in a weird mood that day. So Nick on Twitter says, oh god. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to make this the right size. StreamYard is not working with me today, but he says he has a lot to say about Kefka and just kind of says that, Lord have mercy. I don't know if you guys can see this, like it like going bigger and smaller, but it's just like. All right. Anyways, anything else about Kefka while I'm trying to make this tweet cooperate with me?
His laugh, that 16-bit laugh.
It's horrifying. Oh, you did really well. I hate it.
Really...
I hate it. I hate that. Oh my god.
I've only heard it about 500,000 times. I think 6 is the second Final Fantasy I've played the most.
I'm excited to get through it.
I love it.
But yeah, that laugh. I even put that in our notes. Like, fucking that laugh. It like chills you. But Nick says, oh, and because he's one of the only villains in gaming to actually succeed in destroying the world, and I felt like he was evil for the sake of being evil. That, and I'm afraid of clowns, that makes him creepy to me too. He's like a Final Fantasy Joker, and I will always love him. So, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, he's nuts.
He's nuts. He's insane. There's
chaotic evil.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
He's insane.
So chaotic evil.
I'm sorry, but the poison. So literally, I'm not even like 4. I think I'm like 5 hours into the game at the most. And he literally set a fucking village on fire, and then he poisoned the river.
Yeah.
I'm already like.
Just cause.
He was just like, I'm gonna poison it, and everyone's like, oh, don't do that. He's like, bitch, like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it, girl.
So I won't ruin it for you, but I want to give a special shout out to General.
Oh yeah.
General Leo, you'll find out.
Oh, okay.
General Leo, if you had the poison river, he should have been, because he talks with Kefka a lot. They don't get along well. He's the
he was
like a military dude with the blonde hair.
Oh, he's the one with the mohawk. I made him have a really southern accent.
Yep.
I remember that.
General
Leo.
He's arguing not to poison the river.
Yeah.
That's not honorable. That's not how.
He's ridiculous.
Drown Summer says, a discussion I had with someone else recently on the subject of a remake for 6, like 7. I've been hearing this a lot. A lot of people want 6 remade. I fear that they will try to add more complexity to Kefka and give him a backstory. Kefka needs to work in the same as Joker in the Dark Knight, where it isn't established and what we are given is questionable. I think
That's what I loved about it.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I actually agree with that, but I don't think that will happen if they do remake 6. I think they will go more into his backstory for sure.
Well, doesn't he have a bit of a backstory already?
Well, yeah, but like I'm talking like he said, they'll add more complexity is what I should have said.
Yeah.
I hope not, because I feel like
but I just think
they built that character as not needing that, and I mean they did such a well. What's our consensus, real quick, on the remakes that they're doing? So with 7 remake, did they do a good job or not?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I thought they did.
Excellent job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I have my faith in Square Enix is pretty unshakable already, but definitely is boosted after 7 remakes. So I'd like to hope, since the character of Kefka was built to be that chaos, that unpredictability, you don't need to know where he came from to be afraid of what he's going to do next.
Yeah.
And if they do give him more complexity, if anything, like if they have, I mean, did he have parents? I don't know. I don't care. It's Kefka, I mean, did they have paint too? Was he born of a race of clown people? I don't know. I don't need to know that. I just need to know that he poisoned some frickin' water for no goddamn reason.
It's true.
That's bad.
I mean, he is a memorable character for that reason. Chiji and Bilbo right now in chat are saying something I've not heard this. I've actually not heard
What's this?
I do think Kefka is the most overrated villain in the series. That's what Chiji just said. Is he
That is a bold statement.
That is a bold statement. I think he's...
I've never heard that. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Respectfully disagree.
Respectfully disagree. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's overrated at all. But also on the whole backstory thing, I don't think that would actually be too bad, because thinking more about Kefka, we have no idea. So he was, I think, a teenager, and this is very, very lightly touched on that when he was a teenager, he was the first experimental Magitech Knight. And that could have been the cause of his chaotic, nihilistic personality. So he could have actually been more normal, before that time.
Potentially.
Yeah. And so, it would be nice to see, at least from the point of experimentation. Here's this normal kid, Captain America's first movie, just this scrawny little, weak, but just normal kid. And then they, screw him up and turn him into, this, unyielding, unwavering, just chaos. And I think I would like to see that part of the story, especially if they added more towards showing Kefka's origins with that, but then also as they refine the Magitech Knight process.
Yeah, because I did see that I have not finished the game yet, but I was doing some research and I saw that he was not a failed experiment, but he was an experiment, and that can make someone fucking insane.
I would call him a failure, yeah, because he got stronger, but he was uncontrollable, and he lost his own sanity. He got shattered in the process.
Yeah,
kind of like Punisher.
Yeah, so he was a failed experiment, which we see a lot in Final Fantasy. So we see that Sephiroth was kind of a failed experiment in a way.
Yep.
Not only Sephiroth.
So was Cloud.
Cloud was a failed experiment. Yep. Who else was a failed experiment?
Hojo.
Sorry, go ahead.
I would say, Hojo considered Sephiroth to be his best work, right?
Yeah.
I guess you're right.
So I wouldn't know
himself was broken.
Yeah, but he didn't fulfill his purpose. They wanted him to be an ancient and talk to the planet.
Yeah,
right?
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
An artificial. Well, wasn't that from their mistake where they thought that Genova was an
Yes.
Right.
And she really wasn't, It's oops. We meant to give you Cetra blood. We may have given you Martian crazy blood. Sorry.
Yeah.
They'll give you a pretty sweet position in our army to make up for it.
Yeah, and you're a hero. Everybody likes you. Don't make him mad.
Oh my god.
Ask him about his mother.
Don't say mother. Just don't say it. And then going along with the most overrated character that Chi has his opinion on, Bilbo also says that he says Kefka is, in my opinion, is trash. So everyone has their own opinion. I think that we've all had our own opinions in this whole thing, who we think is a good villain and who isn't. In my opinion, I think he is a very good villain because he scares the shit out of me. And that is something I want. I want it to scare the crap out of me, and that is something that Kefka does.
Yeah.
And again, I think I mentioned it before. Final Fantasy, the stories in each one is different and really brings a diversity of interest from lots of different walks of life. And so you're going to have people who are going to like one thing. They're not going to like something else that maybe a lot of other people do. And that's cool. I mean, everybody's not going to like 100% of the same stuff. And I can see where people are coming from, where if they need depth to their antagonists, why would they like Kefka?
Yeah.
I mean, for real, he doesn't have to have depth. To me, I accept Kefka as what he is. He's not my favorite villain, but he's not the worst either. Like, but it's just a testament to what Square has been able to create with this series that has something for everybody in it, really.
Yeah, and I'm seeing Hojo being thrown around in chat right now, and we are going to get to Hojo. He's also terrifying. But I have a lot to say about Hojo in a second. But we do have some other tweets about Kefka. So it says, Kefka for sure. He enslaves the most powerful people in the world, and he has a hellfire weapon, poisons an entire castle full of people, kills General Leo, destroys the world, and hates everything. Yeah. And that's another thing with Kefka. He's so driven by hate. I've never seen a character so hateful. And he has no really reason to hate. We don't know that because we don't know much about him. But he's just so, he's just I hate it. Even if he goes on the rant of hate, right? He's just constantly saying, I hate this, I hate that. So it's interesting to see a character that hates so much. He hates everything. There's nothing he loves, I don't think.
No, because he's already far gone at that point. He's already crazy.
Yeah. And then we have a last tweet about Kefka. 100% this. Kefka is not giving a shit about anything and wanting to see the world just burn and doing it. It was fucking terrifying. No motivation, no reasoning at all. He just did it because he wanted to. And I think that's what's messed up. And we think about our world and these Yeah, we think about our world and serial killers and why did they do this? It's just because they wanted to. And I think that's kind of what makes Kefka a little bit more real, is because we can kind of see that evil in our world.
What is it, John Wayne Gacy?
Yeah, for real.
Clown.
But yeah,
I think we're frozen in the stream again.
Yeah, I think we're frozen.
No, it's moving for me.
Oh, it just started back up again.
Oh, okay, sorry. It's probably because I'm not going to add as many pictures next time.
This might not land with anybody. I do like Kefka, but this he reminds me. Oh, I guess other way around. I watch a good amount of anime, and his anime it's pretty popular. Hunter x Hunter.
Oh, I heard
that. Yeah. Good shout out.
Hisoka is for sure Kefka. Hisoka is based on Kefka. You cannot change my mind. It's just,
I wish I could play that sound of just his laugh right now. It's just it's so strange.
I could do it again, but I charge for performances.
Oh my god. So
I just want to add, I feel a little guilty because of how passionately I spoke about Final Fantasy IV. Final Fantasy IV and 6 are by far equal in my heart and my mind. I just shut myself up because I was talking so much earlier. My namesake is from Final Fantasy VI, so Shadow is my character. There is no other Final Fantasy character that hits me more accurately than Shadow.
So you wait on the cliff until the last 2 seconds, don't you?
That was the best risk I had ever taken in gaming. Because I was like, why is the game giving me this choice? And then nagging me about it and nagging me about it. I was like, you know what? I can load my save from before the floating island. So let me see what happens. And I took that risk and I was rewarded. And that was the most gratifying thing in the world. And then even afterwards, where, you know, like I'm in the world of Ruin and trying to figure out, like, what's going on with all my characters and stuff. I had no idea that I would see him again, and then I did, and I had to have him. And like, there was no internet. Like, there were barely even strategy guides back then. Like, there were magazines like Nintendo Power and other video game magazines, but like, I had to figure that out like on my own, and that was just nuts. That whole experience, like that game's just that it's in my heart. And like this, what they had with Shadow, like if they remade the game, I would give $1 billion if I had it to just see Shadow more fleshed out and not necessarily change, just more fleshed out. There's so much they still have that they could do with him.
Right. From the chat, Chiji says Hisoka. I'm sorry, I haven't watched Hunter x Hunter. Is better than Kefka. Is a better Kefka. A better Kefka.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
So, but Six has been really
But I'm the
good
biggest
so far.
Hunter stan ever, so
Oh
that's
my
probably
gosh.
why.
Well, along with Kefka, we cannot forget about Big Boy Gestal. Emperor Gestal.
Oh, the Emperor. Yep.
Yes, Emperor. I don't have much to say about the Emperor. I have not gotten to him yet in the game. He's been thrown around. His name has, but I just know that he is kind of a driving point for Kefka in a way.
He's the leader of that whole empire.
Yeah, he's fucked up.
Yeah.
From what I don't know much.
Really, like he's not given much airtime in the game. And honestly, when I think about him, I get hungry because of the whole like banquet scene between him and like the rebels, you know, the resist.
Shadow, you cut out.
I don't know where I cut.
You said the rebels, and then you cut out.
Oh, the resistance, yeah. Like you basically you go to dinner with him, and there's like multiple phases with questions and answers, and like you get a choice, like you get a chance to like interview the Emperor, and like his answers or the questions that you ask him determine, I believe, like access to treasure, if I remember correctly. So like that was huge. Like that whole sequence, that and the opera were really profound to me for any kind of like Final Fantasy game. They were more like Ninja Gaiden or like cinematic experiences in a game, which was still pretty rare at that point.
Right. Opera was huge. Like, remake the opera sequence, please.
God,
it's because of Final Fantasy VI that I actually got into opera and was like, when I can afford to go to an opera, I'm gonna go. And then I got really into them. Final Fantasy VI did that for me.
Really?
It was beautiful. It was really well done. Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited to get more into this one. I have never played it. But I do know that Kefka does not have makeup at one point. I know we're not talking about Kefka, but I forgot to bring this up. I looked up Kefka no makeup. There is like one scene where he doesn't have makeup on and he's like hot. Like, come on. I need Square Enix to make an ugly character for once in their life. Like, really.
Which version of 6 are you playing, by the way?
I'm playing the Steam version, which people have had their opinions. People have said, oh, it's fine, and then other people have been like, oh, the Steam version?
I believe that's based on, like, mobile, but it was a lot more like SNES, too.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I played it the other day, but I'm going to hopefully finish it.
I feel like the graphics for Steam is exactly what it is for Android and iOS.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, people get mad about everything. It doesn't look the same. They tried to smooth the characters out. Clearly, the magic effects, the ability effects, the sprites for the enemies, everything is 100 times better. It's the character sprites that look a little different.
Yeah,
I can't see how the game is any more or less trash. It is the exact game.
Right.
It's just the way the stuff looks.
One of the people viewing, his name is John, sometimes he's in here, he is like a pixel artist, and he says that the sprites look pregnant, and now I can't unsee it, so, I can't unsee it. They kind of do, because they're like supposed to be like puffed out, but like they just kind of look pregnant. So let's move on to, I think everyone's going to have an opinion about this character, Big Boy Sephiroth. Sorry, John Summer. I can link you to a mod which puts the graphics to the original. Oh, okay, John Summer. Yes, that'd be awesome. We're still figuring out our podcast week by week, but we should have a really cool overlay next week. Gigi just said my boy. So Sephiroth. God, Sephiroth. I'm gonna start off with the tweets. So I picked Sephiroth because he's just so darn fearsome and cool. Yeah, he is. It's hard not to... Yeah, he is. I mean, what do you guys have to say about Sephiroth? I mean, especially in the remake, he was a force.
He was really creepy in the remake.
Oh god, his eyes.
I mean, are we allowed to spoil or not? Because I mean, it's hard to talk about Sephiroth right now with what they've introduced with the remake.
Let's just stick to his appearance for the remake. You can look that up.
And I guess that's like the overarching question here is how long is something new before you're allowed to talk about it?
I know.
For a while.
Because we did talk about remake in our last. No one ever said anything.
I feel like I got in trouble or in my head because I felt like I divulged too much, but I'm like, okay, the game's been out for a minute.
Yeah,
maybe we could throw up a poll on Twitter and ask like how people feel.
Like, are we allowed to talk about it now?
I mean,
like with regard to Final Fantasy VII.
Right, I feel like we should leave Final Fantasy VII Remake for its own week, just because people are not finished.
Absolutely.
They can't buy it at the moment. Like it's just kind of it's hard. It is. She said it's maybe too soon. I think it is too.
Well, if we're gonna go OG 7, then we have to realize that Sephiroth of the game, the vast majority of the game, is not actually Sephiroth.
Yeah.
And I can't say that. Damn it. Okay, this is going to be hard for me.
I know, this is going to be hard.
I'll let somebody else talk, because I keep trying to make correlations.
Talk about like the memory of Sephiroth, like how he's depicted in flashbacks.
Or like Crisis Core or Advent Children, how he's just terrifying. I remember I was watching Advent Children with a friend of mine who is not into Final Fantasy, and he saw Sephiroth just stabbing. And I remember her looking at the screen just going, "You got stabbed like 5 times, just sit down."
The Blu-ray version, when they remade that battle sequence when Cloud got skewered like a frickin' kebab.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was fantastic.
She was like, "Who is this guy?"
Blood everywhere.
Yeah. But John Summer says, on the same point as that, years ago, my friend pointed out that the operatic track, the lyric sound is saying Sephiroth, big and hairy, big and scary. I'm not going to undo that.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
From Latin?
Yeah.
He is hairy.
Is he? I mean, yeah, I guess so. I mean, he's got a lot of hair. He's got a lot of long hair, but he doesn't have any, like, maybe underneath that cloak he's like a Sasquatch.
Oh, his hair migrated to the top of his head.
Yeah, Benjamin, who's actually Chi-Chi on this chat, here is your tweet. Sephiroth, because he's a perfect example of an angel fallen from grace. He is the most perfect being on the outside, but on the inside a broken man, a mind shattered by his own insecurities. That's a good way to put it.
I think he's shattered by his DNA, like being part alien.
That's
But I mean, it didn't make him go crazy until he decided to like think about stuff. Like, so I mean, Sephiroth was really a relatively okay dude up until that Nibelheim reactor investigation, and then he kind of went ape shit.
Yeah,
and it was a real quick snap too. It wasn't slow. It didn't lead up to it. He thought about something, and he's like, "Wait, well, fuck." And then he went to research it, and then the next day he's burning the village down. You know,
that whole scene too was such a good build-up. I think I remember even back in the day when I saw him going through like all the books he was reading, and then you would like go back and forth, and you see all the books that were on the shelves that were on the ground, so it like implied that he had read them. I like from there I was like, oh, something's gonna happen. You know,
it's almost
I
like
was
the
like, oh no,
that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, for sure.
It was like he knew it was a build.
Camel didn't have a broken back until like he didn't have any tells whatsoever in Crisis Core leading up to that point.
Yeah, that's
true. It was literally like, I'm good, I'm stable, fuck you, Genesis, you're getting all weird, and Angeal, you're betraying us, and then he just snaps.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe Crisis Core didn't do as good of a job as it could have in leading us to think that Sephiroth actually has something going on, but from my memory, he just like, oh yeah, I'm bad now, and fuck the whole world, because mother.
Yeah.
I think you're right about that, but I also think like his internal psyche and personality was built like on a house of cards. Like very
Sure.
fragile and frail. But being Sephiroth would never give you an indication that that was going on underneath the surface by nature of him being badass Sephiroth, you know? But all it really needed was just one lit match to basically, you know, shatter that frame that he had built himself. So I feel like, you know, just internally he was fragile, but didn't need to like express it in any way. He just may not like. It's kind of like the anime Fist of the North Star. Like when you're hit in such a way that you don't realize you're already dead, and then 10 seconds later you explode.
Yeah.
Sounds terrible. Oh my god.
We have some things.
What a way to go.
Sorry, Vanessa, go ahead.
I feel like he was already starting to like slowly break throughout the game because when Genesis left and then when Angeal left and then they come back when Genesis attacks the Shinra building, Angeal mentions like, hey, you're losing weight.
Oh.
And like to me that's like a sign of like depression, like sudden weight loss.
And I'm going through that game
That's a
right
good
now, so I look forward to that. My memory is a little bit choppy.
Yeah, like refusing missions too, like not wanting to go fight his friends. I feel like he was starting to break already. And then that like Nibelheim was like the straw that broke the camel's back and he finally snapped.
Yeah, I love that because I think there's these subtle hints in Final Fantasy that sometimes we don't see until hindsight. But even, you make a good point with that, honestly, because I don't think we thought much of it with Sephiroth. But knowing what we knew, we just knew he was going to be evil. So there wasn't any build up. It was kind of just assumed he was just going to be evil.
Well, we read chapter 2 before we read chapter 1, so going into Crisis Core, there was like, you knew that was a bad guy, you just didn't know when he was going to do it.
Right, and it was just kind of like, we kind of ignored those signs because we just already knew. And, those signs were there. It's weird to think of Sephiroth as a good guy, even though he was, and Cloud idolized him, and it's weird, it's just weird to me. I can't imagine him as a war hero, ever, really, because he is so evil in the like original game, and he does so many things. So it's hard to imagine him as a war hero, personally.
I'm curious though, if we're talking about Sephiroth being evil and doing a lot of bad things, right? And then I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what's the first thing that Sephiroth did in Final Fantasy VII that you're like, wow, that's bad? Kill President Shinra? Because, was it? Put a stake on a big tree? I mean, really, I want to say his first big bad act was the one that pisses everybody off. Right, he wasn't really a bad guy. I mean, he was, but he wasn't doing bad things. You just knew he was bad, right? He burned the village down. You found out later. But that was years ago, right? What was he doing during the game? Well, up until the end of Disc 1, you were just chasing him. He wasn't really doing anything.
Right. Chi-Ji said he changed once he started thinking he was just like the monsters.
Yes, when you looked inside that tube or that.
Yeah. And like you said, Doctur with the books, and he was like researching these things and finding out who he really was. Chi-Ji also says in Crisis Core, he said he always knew he was special, but he was shocked when he found out what it really was. Everyone treats him like he's perfect. Okay, so that's just like that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, because I feel like there's many reasons why this man broke, but that definitely is a big one. How he was perfect, and then he wasn't. Chi-Ji also said he destroyed the village, killing Cloud's mom, and killed Tifa's dad, and that's kind of the first act of evil we see from him.
We don't get revealed that until further down the game. Well, I think he goes back through in his memory, right?
Yeah.
In Calm, so it's after the first few hours. We hear about him doing that, but in present time, we're trying to get this guy and his acts that he does throughout the game. I'm trying to remember, like, in real time. He kills a snake, he kills President Shinra, and you're chasing him. But that's not really him because the entire time he's in, like, live stream rock in the north, right?
Yeah.
Just, like, waiting for the black materia, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's, and we have another tweet. I'll say this last thing about Sephiroth, and then we'll move on to Genova. So his interactions with Cloud are the best villain hero moments in Final Fantasy, in my opinion. It's always a game of mental cat and mouse, which always leaves Cloud shook. it shows that the hero is not in control until the last second, and I think that's brilliant, but maybe I'm just biased. And that's the thing with Final Fantasy Remake that I would love to go into on how, I guess I'll go into it. I'm just going to do it, because it's not that big of a giveaway. But how, when you do see Sephiroth in the game, oh my god, Cloud is the most heartbreaking character at that point. Just his fear and his, like, he stops. Like, he almost stops breathing. And it, like, makes me tear up, because whenever I think about it, I remember just being like, oh my god, like, he stops. He just stops breathing. He can't even move. He's paralyzed by this Sephiroth. And
so much of his heroic acts as Cloud, you know, being a first-class soldier, isn't real. Yeah. Most of the stuff he's built his character on wasn't real. Mm-hmm. Sephiroth, the fact that he beat Sephiroth in the reactor, that was real. Yeah. It really did happen. And then he got Mako poisoning from all that crap that Hojo did to him immediately thereafter. So, like, if he's trying to associate things that he did as Zack versus the things he did as Cloud, I mean, he gets a real kind of, that's with that high-pitched thing where he's, like, grabbing his head. He's getting confused.
Yeah.
But, like, he actually did, didn't he? He battled Sephiroth?
He did.
He stabbed him in the back or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
He pushed him.
Well, he got lifted up, didn't he?
It was like a surprise attack, basically, and Sephiroth didn't realize. He was caught off guard. Sephiroth underestimated.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's terrifying in that way, and I think the remake really did a good job in making him so scary. And I remember, because I have a projector, so seeing Sephiroth's face 13 feet high is not very good. It's terrifying. It honestly haunted me a little bit. I'm very jumpy, and so I think the remake, I'm not going to say much more, did an amazing job with his characterization. He's terrifying. He's like Kefka in a way, how he's just so scary. So, yeah, but Drowned Summer says, logically, if Shinra and Wutai were at war, Sephiroth was in that war.
Which, yeah, that's where he got his war hero status, was during the Wutai War.
Right, okay. And then Chi-Ji says that he mentally torments Cloud all the time, which he does, and, oh man, he's gonna mentally torment him more, isn't he? But, so let's go into Jenova. So we cannot have Sephiroth without Jenova. Somebody did make a tweet about Jenova. I need to find it. Hold on. Okay, here it is. You need to get rid of that one. So it says, let me cover that. Jenova is a monstrous cosmic horror that seeks to destroy all life it comes into contact with, can take the form of its prey's loved ones in order to destroy them, can use its own cells to turn others into monsters. If destroyed, will reunite with its parts. It's weird to think of Jenova as a villain because it's more of a thing, but it really, Jenova is a villain. It's weird. It's hard to... and that's why I think Final Fantasy VII is so well liked, because it does have these like crazy plot points in it, where we have like this like, I don't even know, I'm having a hard time finding the words, but like this experiment with this extraterrestrial being that makes humans superhumans, and it's crazy, honestly. I mean, what do you guys have to say about Jenova?
I have to wonder.
Her music's awesome.
Oh, go ahead, Vanessa.
Like, would she really be a villain or that threatening if Hojo didn't, or was it Hojo or Gat? Well, if Shinra didn't decide to like dig her up from the crater,
right? And
would she just be dormant?
That's another thing. I guess. Yeah. What would she be if Hojo never?
I mean, would she? I mean, her cells seem to be very potent, right? I think that's kind of agreed. I mean, and leaving her up there, would she have eventually found her way inside this life stream?
That's how I felt about it. That she would eventually
causing geostigma,
kind of like having a bullet that's slowly traversing in your body that you don't take out. That's how I felt like about Jenova. That
you wouldn't have had Sephiroth.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Hold on.
But you would have still had geostigma.
Yeah. It's weird, but Chi-Ji says he stole Kefka's move, the Heartless Angel, Sephiroth did. Jenova isn't really an antagonistic force. I kind of disagree with that. I think
Her reunion concept is what drives this entire story.
But I feel like that whole concept exists so that she can destroy the planet as this extraterrestrial force. You know, like either consume the life stream or just destroy it.
Yeah, because she's. I feel like she is an antagonist because if it wasn't for Genova, a lot of these things wouldn't be going on. Like if Genova was just completely eradicated, we wouldn't have a lot of these issues in Final Fantasy VII. But I feel like we're all kind of like finding hard. It's hard to find the words with this one. I think Square Enix did a very good job writing this one and coming up with this. But
Advent Children, Sephiroth made pretty clear, I think. Well, the Kadajaroth, whatever.
Yeah.
Made a pretty good like thing about Genova's idea. The Geostigma's death, right? Those remnants will join the life stream and girdle the planet, choking it, corroding it. What he wants is to sail the cosmos of this planet as his vessel. He wants to find a new planet, right?
Yeah.
I think Genova's idea, like, why did she crash land onto the planet? I mean, the idea was not just to be like, oh, I'm dead, I'm here. I mean, I think her original plan and then them being brought to her, I mean, like I said, again, her cells are very, very powerful. Her concept is very powerful. I mean, we think that Shinra just decided, oh, we're going to experimentation require, but were they drawn to find her? Did she make them do it? Like, I don't know. She's.
I feel like she's the personification of COVID, and she wanted to infect the planet.
I have that not only with this one, but I have that with Jack Dinson as well. Kind of like talking about how this all plays into each other. But so go ahead, Vanessa.
Sorry, question. So, someone in the chat mentioned that in the backstory, Genova decimated. Oh, Drowned Summer said the backstory is that Genova decimated the ancients. I remember it being some sort of like disease. Was that geostigma back then too?
Was it?
Or because I know that she killed all the ancients, but like how did she just like physically kill them, or did she infect them with some disease that eventually they died?
That's a good question. I wonder if that was it, geostigma, that killed them. Does anyone know that in chat if that was what it was? Because Genova, and it was thought that Genova was an ancient, correct?
Yeah.
That's what Shinra were believing.
Yeah.
Shinra believes that.
But yeah.
Yeah, and there's a ton of things in Final Fantasy VII that can also apply to our real lives, like how the ancients were kind of seen as, at least in my opinion, I see it as kind of like the native people in America, and how they were killed off, and we want to, not that we want to find their land, but like they were just completely eradicated for our own purposes. Shinra didn't kill the ancients, but the ancients were there first, and then Shinra came next. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of interesting to see how Square Enix kind of went into those things, and also geostigma with like disease, and almost like before COVID-19 happened, it was like leprosy kind of. People were exiled if they had geostigma. We saw that quite often. So, Shadow, what did you say? You said, go ahead and you can read that if you want.
Were you talking about in chat?
Yeah. The perception framed around manipulation.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, like, we were talking in chat about, like, was Sephiroth acting completely on his own, power of suggestion? Was he being manipulated? And I feel like because puppet strings are so common of a theme in Final Fantasy, that was where my brain was going with Sephiroth, is that basically he just needed this, like, shattering of his personality to become susceptible to that power of suggestion. I feel like Genova, is consciously in some capacity responsible for everything bad that happens, like any kind of like poisoning of the planet. I feel like that was truly like Genova's intention.
Yeah. And then Drowned Summer says geostigma was only in Advent Children. I don't believe that what you learn truly details what happens. So I guess we don't.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Anyways, moving away because we could go on for days about these two. I do want to go into Hojo because I feel like his characterization in Remake was intense. It was terrifying. He was he like made my skin crawl.
His voice actor sounded like the Quincy from Bleach. Is that the same guy?
Oh, I wonder. I don't know.
I know, of course, if people are watching anime and they're purists and they only watch them with Japanese voice, then this is kind of like a nevermind moment. But the English voice actor that played, of course, you have to have watched the show. Anybody watch the show? First off,
no.
Bleach?
No. Bleach.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the English voice actors is who I'm referencing. Who the Quincy character? I can't remember his name.
So Chi-Chi says, yeah, that's his English voice actor.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
So
I just needed validation. It got real quiet. I'm like, I'm going to keep talking awkwardly until somebody tells me I'm right.
Yeah, no, you're good. But yeah, Hojo was, he wasn't as terrifying in the original, I don't think. It just grosses me out that he impregnated Lucrezia. I'm sorry. It's going to gross me out forever, and I refuse to believe
If it grosses you out, just think about it. She did that. That was consensual.
I know!
And that should gross you out more.
It had to have been, like, artificial. Like, they stuck in a syringe and just shot it up.
Please, because I'm like, I would...
That was very beautiful.
The way that the miracle of life, ladies and gentlemen, given to you by Vanessa. But I mean, the way that Vincent was acting, I don't know. He felt betrayed. If it was just artificial, I mean, that's maybe a discussion for another more mature time. But
we're already 18 plus here. We can talk about it. But
got the birds and the bees.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, because Hojo might not have looked always like a crazy maniac. I mean, crazy people need loving too.
But, I know, but like,
did he get it?
If his penis was near me, I'd cry.
Oh gosh.
I would cry.
Wow, that's the quote of the episode.
Yeah.
I
just
hate
clip
it.
that for Twitch. Yes.
It's just, it cringes me to my core. I remember when I was younger and I did play, like, Dirge of Cerberus, and I was like, I don't believe it. I was like, Vincent is Sephiroth's father because I refuse to believe that beautiful Lucrezia would ever have that man near her. But, like, obviously that's not true. But I just hate it. I hate it. So... It's
Dirge of Cerberus, man.
I know, it's disgusting. I can't. But anyways, he grossed me out, especially in Remake. I probably shouldn't say more than that. But he nasty in Remake.
Hojo got game.
Hojo got game.
That's so funny.
Got game.
He's like, let me just impregnate you with Genova cells, and she's like, oh yeah.
Don't think I like that sentence too much.
Sorry, Vincent. You're just a Turk. He's a scientist.
He's
just got paycheck.
I feel like we need a photo of what Hojo looked like back then to help justify any of this.
But even so, like, his voice, he's just disgusting.
Probably just not to talk.
Maybe she's just like, shut up, please. I don't know. Maybe she was.
There's only one way to do this.
Oh God. I mean, maybe she was like really into his science. I don't know. Like, maybe that was her thing. But. Yeah,
I feel like alcohol must have been involved as well.
Oh God, it had to have been. But Gigi said, "You see
little
how
materia juice." You know what I'm saying?
Oh God. Gigi says, "You know how handsome Vincent is, and he still took Lucrezia. He looked the same." He says, "Okay, yeah, Vincent was hot, but
wasn't Hojo like in the? I'm trying to think of the city in Final Fantasy VII. It has the beach." And Hojo was like, I feel like he had like women surrounding him on the beach. I'm just saying, he could be packing more than science. You know.
No, please. It's so gross. I hate it. He's so crazy.
I'm having a bad time.
I know. I hate this. It's cringy. All right. So here's the deal, friends. We are at the 2-hour mark, and we don't have quite a bit to go, but we could go for another hour if you guys are up to it. We could stop here and do this in 2 weeks. It's up to you guys.
I feel like we have a lot to talk about still.
Yeah.
We are getting to the big bulky games. 10 is going to be like an hour, I guarantee it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to shut up. You guys are going to have to mute me.
I know, yeah. So I'm like,
I'm here for it. I'm here for 10.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, we could split it into 2 weeks.
Yeah,
have a part 2 antagonist.
Right, because we'll have 8 through 15, and we've gotten through pretty much half. Yeah, that's half. So I think this would be the perfect place to end it. We did have we had a lot of chat interaction, and these tweets will be displayed on the next episode for sure. But we are not going into it next week because we do have another plan. Because we have a special guest. I don't want to give him away right now, but he is a pretty big deal.
That's right.
On Twitter. So he wanted to come. Or I asked him. I begged him. Not I asked him. I was like, would you like to come talk about Kingdom Hearts? And he was like, yes. So he's going to come. I don't know if he's here right now. He did tune in earlier. He didn't say anything, though. But, yeah, so next week we will be doing Kingdom Hearts. We're not sure what yet. We had a hard week. This week has been just insane. So I feel like we kind of all brainstormed yesterday and got things together. But it turned out well. So we'll come back to this in 2 weeks, I guess. Oh, man.
I have a question since we were basically ending off on Final Fantasy VII.
Yes.
Johnny Depp as Vincent. What do you think?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I don't think the world's ready for that. I don't think they're going to handle that as like a species, you know?
Yeah, I would love it, but hot damn. Yeah, that would be a lot. So, I don't know. I feel like this one was a lot.
I feel like there's a correlation to be made between Johnny Depp abused and Vincent abused. Like, there's something there.
He's just perfect. I mean, you'd have
Lucrezia just... Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we came out of this. Last week we were like so happy and peppy with our conversation because it was like a happy thing to talk about, and now we're just like, God, that person's fucked up. Like, you know? So this has been definitely a dark topic. We'll lighten it up next week with some Kingdom Hearts, but we will come back to this.
Really awesome.
Those of you who joined in chat, thank you. You guys have added to the conversation so much. We have a very active chat this time. So
it's been great.
It's been awesome.
Hell yeah.
Thank you for everyone who joined. Thank you guys again for joining me. And yeah, so we got some plans. I think the next one about this is going to be even bigger because we have a lot more to talk about. So, yeah. But does anyone have any closing remarks?
I'm tired.
I know. And can you believe we had started at this point last week? Like we made it 2 hours earlier this week because me and Lieutenant are in the EU and it's very late for us. But yeah, so. But yeah, that's all I have to say. So I'm excited to talk about this in a couple weeks for sure. We'll have an overlay. We'll have a really cool overlay next week, and we'll have some emotes.
We're gonna get fancier.
Yeah, we're gonna have some fancy stuff going on. I'm excited about it. So yeah, but thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
See y'all.